Cordak. Welcome to my midterm project for Rich Media Production, aka New Media 4310. I'm just going to resume that so we get those lines gone. So for my project, my midterm, I wanted to create a happy moments journal just as a way for us as busy people to remember the good things that are happening throughout our days. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of a live preview of what the app is. It has just a very simplistic design and feel. I wanted it to feel kind of like a journal, more collagey and just authentic to a creative person, because I find that to be true of myself and wanted it to reflect that. So I used a carousel view rather than a scroll view, which I will talk about more in a minute. But basically you swipe through every single day. We'll go all the way to Sunday. I like it to start on a Monday because I just see my days more like that. My week's more like that. And then when you click on each photo, a little blurb comes up where you can type in the actual specific date, if you like that. And then you can type in your happy moment. So for this one, I would say, getting to paint this picture. Woo! And then you just get to click out of it. And then you swipe. And you can do that for all of them. And it's just a good little way to remember the little blurbs about your day. And you can just swipe through and see that, which is super cool, I think. So that is the live preview, and now I will talk a little bit about my code, because although it looks simple, there's definitely a lot coding-wise that had to go on behind the scenes for it to work at all. So as you can see in the content view, I've defined a couple of private variables. These just allow a lot of the positioning and trigger the view that comes up when you see like the input. So we have those variables, also the custom color to get the background that you have. And then we just go through where I have the Z stack to set the background color behind everything else. And then after that, or within that, a V stack that contains the text title, and then a geometry reader, which is a really cool modifier that I was able to find through different tutorials and stuff that actually sets the content relative to the frame view and the actual like size of the device, so it's just more responsive. And then we just had this looks confusing, but I used an index, which I will talk about in a minute, that is in my journal data view, to populate each of these items rather than hard coding every individual image, text, etc. And this is all, most of this code is just, it's all just the sizing of it, to be honest. It just displays how big it is when it is either just being scrolled through without the other text, or what it looks like when that input text pops up and the image has to move a little bit to accommodate for that. The drag gesture just sets, what was cool is that because this is a carousel rather than a scroll view, you only see one at a time, whereas in a scroll view you could start to see the edge of another image coming over. This one only goes through one at a time, and I liked being able to add some animation to it just to give it that kind of springy movement. And so the current trip index just tells us where it is, and then that way when you end on a value and you click it, the correct input value view comes up for each image. That way you get the right one. So that is the content view. So talking a little bit about the data, this is a really simple data sheet where I just had an array for each of the items titles, which is that little middle button looking thing that you see on top of the images. That title comes from this data, as well as the image, because they're named the same thing in my asset catalog, in those arrays where you see for each indices, and the index for topics dot item name, that kind of dot notation calling. That is what allows those to be inputted and populated into their respective categories. The carousel view is just what makes the actual image. So it looks a little bit different than it does on the content view, because the content view then takes that and puts it into its own frame with the carousel scrolling view. but this just allows us to style it without having to style it on the main content view, and just makes for organization a lot easier, which is super nice. And as you can see, we use self image name and self item, and that comes from the strings up there. And so because of that, that is also something that is populated by data from journal data. And then finally the input view, which is the, yep, as you can see right there, this one just says Monday because I have it set to Monday on the preview provider down there. But as you can see, we just have all of the variables to create text fields. That was another really cool user interactive feature that I was able to find, is where users can actually input their own text and have that saved on the app. And so that is just styling for that. And then I just called them as their own views by styling them below, just for consistency and ease of organization, I guess you could say. So as you can see here, we have our binding variables for each one. That was super important because you have to bind them to the text field so that they show up on the actual app. And as you can see, we just have some styling. Yeah, that is pretty much walking through, and then my asset catalog where I just put the images. But other than that, pretty simple app, but has good organization, and was very interesting to learn about how to use data and arrays rather than having to hard code everything, and allowing that to populate the app itself, and just learning a lot more about Geometry Reader and how to call indexes in the actual content. This was definitely probably more like 30 to 40% past my comfortability, if I'm being honest. It definitely took a lot of Googling, but I feel like I've learned more from this one project than I have all year so far, which is pretty cool. And definitely couldn't have made it back in August, so that feels pretty good. Yeah, thank you for watching my midterm project, and hopefully you enjoyed it. Bye!